You know what? I don't have an intro because I forgot to make one, so Greatest Heist Iceberg has been a long time coming for me, so yeah, let's just go into it. An unidentified man, mostly known by the name D.B. Cooper, had hijacked a Boeing 727 aircraft on November 24th, 1971. Cooper had told the flight attendant that he was armed with a bomb, demanded $200,000, and requested 4 parachutes. Then he made the jump and made it into multiple Watch Mojo Top 10s videos. A sketch and multiple suspects have come up, but no one has ever been identified, and the story of DB Cooper can usually be summed up in about 4 sentences, so yeah. On March 18, 1990, 13 works of art got stolen from the Isabella Garden Museum in Boston. Guards had spotted 2 men posing as police officers that responded to a disturbance call. Then these guys were actually thieves and they tied up the guards that were actually there, then they robbed the museum over the next hour. They had stolen less valuable art pieces, which confused investigators, but the FBI is under the assumption that this was done by a criminal organization, although physical evidence for this is not strong, and to this day, empty frames remain at the museum in hopes that these works of art are actually returned. The biggest suspect for this was the Boston Mafia, but no one has ever been convicted of this. One of the many heists in this iceberg that's been dubbed the heist of the century is the Antwerp Diamonds heist, taking place in Antwerp, Belgium on February 15 to 16, 2003. A gang of thieves known as the School of Turin, led by Leonardo Notarbartolo. There we go, that's a hard name to pronounce. They had pulled off the biggest diamond heist of all time and has been labeled as one of the largest robberies in history, right? Jewelry, silver, gold, and obviously diamonds were all stolen that were worth more than 100 million euros, I believe. They got passed through 10 layers of security, including bypassing cameras, a key lock, magnetic, heat, and motion sensors, and a steel gate, most importantly. All while using aluminum to disrupt the magnetic field so they wouldn't get caught doing this. They then stole everything within a matter of 2 hours, put everything into a couple of cars, and then sped away. A man named Pietro Tavano, also known as Speedy, developed a sense of "I probably made a mistake" syndrome and made his friend Notar Batolo stop the car and began throwing the evidence into the woods after suffering a panic attack after committing the crime. Dude quite literally developed a conscience within like 5 minutes. They didn't realize they were on private property when they did this, and when they tried to recover what was thrown out, they didn't get everything, and the property owner, August Van Camp, called the police. They had found videotape film, a half-eaten sandwich, and a dozen small diamonds, along with a receipt for the video surveillance systems. This was all enough to link the crime back to Notar Bartolo, and he got 10 years in prison while the rest got 5 years. And Notar Bartolo claims that they only took 20 million and authorities claim that 100 million is still missing. On September 12, 1997, the biggest theft of cash money was committed. A man named Alan Pace was the mastermind behind all of it, recruiting 5 of his friends as well. Pace had worked at Dunbar, an armored car depot in Los Angeles, as a regional safety inspector, and you ready for this? Dude got fired for undisclosed reasons the day before the heist took place. This entire thing was planned out at a house party in fucking Long Beach, California. I know you're watching. Imagine going to school in Long Beach. Kinda cringe. Just after midnight on September 13, they went to the depot with Pace's knowledge that the vault was left open due to massive amounts of money being scheduled to be moved. The way they pulled this off was that they were coming in wearing masks and black clothing. They ambushed the security guards while they were on their lunch break, so no one could actually sound the alarms. This was actually kind of smart. Pace, still having the keys, allowed him to enter. In 30 minutes, $18.9 million were actually unloaded into a parked U-Haul van. This was immediately thought to be an inside job, and Pace was started to be closely monitored by the police, even though they found nothing on him. Eugene Lamar Hill, one of the crew members of the heist, fucked everything up for everyone. Hill exposed the entire thing when he gave a real estate broker a stack of cash with the original straps. The broker then went to the police and Hill was arrested, then confessed and named the entire crew. Pace himself was sentenced to 24 years in prison and most of the money has never been recovered. On December 11, 1978, at the John F. Kennedy International Airport, a group of mobsters pulled off what's called the Lufthansa heist. At 3:12 a.m., a van went to the deliveries entrance at the Lufthansa Airlines terminal, and several masked men exited the van, all strapped with that thing on them, and they entered the terminal. 64 minutes later, they loaded their van with 5 million in untraceable cash and another 1 million in jewels and got away. Thanks to the mafia, this heist was able to be pulled off. Jimmy Burke, an associate of the Lucchese family, I believe it's Lucchese family, who were one of the top 5 families of New York's mafia. He was the mastermind behind all of this. And honestly, fuck me, that was a lot to say in like that quick sentence right there. Fuck. A bookmaker named Martin Krugman provided the info to Burke's associate Henry Hill that a vault in a Lufthansa Airlines terminal was used for money exchange. Krugman got the info from Louis Werner, a worker from the airport who 1. Owed money to Krugman and 2. Once stole $22,000 from the vault himself. Burke, Krugman, and Werner planned everything such as time and parking location. When the heist went down, Lufthansa employees were held hostage, threatened, and forced to cooperate. When everything was finished, the employees were not allowed to alert authorities for 15 minutes, allowing for the crew enough time to escape. And honestly, I'd love to talk about this entire thing, but I need room for the other heists on this iceberg. The Banco Central burglary at Fortaleza Ceará, Brazil, in August 6, 2005, was one of the world's largest heists. Burglars managed to tunnel their way into the vault of Brazil's central bank, who handles and issues all of Brazil's money, and took 70 million reais, I believe that's how it's pronounced, that's Brazil's currency. Despite the usual security measures, the burglars were able to get through. The actual heist started with a plan to rent property very close to the bank and pose as a landscaping company. With this, they managed to dig a tunnel over 3 months and ended up with a 256-foot tunnel that ran beneath the streets and emerged right under the vault itself. By the time the tunnel was finished though, it was large enough for a person to completely walk through this entire thing, just like your mama's ass. During the actual stealing, they stole around 3.5 tons of Brazilian currency. Like just tons, that's not even like how much it's worth, just how much that weighs. The money was transported from a tunnel into a van. This happened during the weekend, so once Monday came, the employees just came and see the aftermath of the heist. So 150 plus people were arrested and 9 million was recovered, but most of the key people who pulled this off have not been caught. This is due to them being victims of kidnappings or even murders. Some people actually believe that this was an inside job due to the burglars' hideout having a detailed knowledge of the bank, as well as a former police officer who was arrested for having a role in executing the heist itself. As for the money, it's believed to have been either laundered or even smuggled out of Brazil. The Central Bank of Iraq robbery was indubitably one of the most dubious heists ever, like often regarded as the biggest bank robbery of all time. Much like a lot of these are gonna be referred to that way. A whopping 1 billion in cash just disappeared from the bank just before the US-led invasion of Iraq in 2003. Do you know how many whoppers you could get with that? That's like 2. That's pretty good. Hours before the invasion started, Saddam Hussein had sent a handwritten letter to the bank telling them to release 1 billion in cash for the well-being of the nation. The money was loaded into trucks and took more than 5 hours to complete, with almost 900 million in US dollars and 100 million in euros being transported. The actual organizers were Saddam's 2 brothers, Qusay and Uday Hussein, who organized a team of intelligence and security officials to make the cash transported. American agencies obviously went looking for the money. 650 million was found in the walls in one of Hussein's palaces, which led to multiple raids taking place. Multiple arrests have been made, but a large portion of the money still hasn't been found to this day. You know, honestly, looking at this, I thought it was going to be like a much bigger thing, but no, it's quite literally just Saddam Hussein going,
"Give me money, give me money, give me money, give me money, give me money."
In 1976, during the Lebanon Civil War, a group of robbers used explosives to break into a Catholic church. The church led directly into the neighboring British Bank of the Middle East. Professional locksmiths were brought in to open the vault at the bank, and robbers got away with $44.5 million in cash, stocks, gold, along with other valuables. And to this day, no one has been caught, nor has anything been recovered. In 2015, London's Hatton Garden Safe Deposit Company had about £13.7 million in cash and jewels stolen. It was regarded as the largest burglary in English legal history. And apparently, the robbers were some old ass fuckers, like they were in their 60s and 70s. Brian Reeder, the leader of this heist, was rumored to also be a part of the Baker Street robbery. In 1983, the Brinksmat Depot near the Heathrow Airport in London had 26 million worth of pounds, diamonds, and gold stolen. A man named Brian Robinson was sentenced for 25 years in prison for this heist, and, dude was the mastermind behind all of this. As much as Robinson thought he was a big ol' Einstein brain type of guy, there were a lot of mistakes here, from the planning to the execution. Quite literally, from start to end. They were caught with the help of informant tip-offs and forensic evidence that linked them to the crime, so they kinda got caught easily. The phrase, professional criminal from Ohio, sounds too good to be true. But it is true. Emil Dincio, along with a group of 6 others, went all the way to the internet's most hated state, California, which isn't nearly as bad as buttfuck Texas. Anyways, the reason for this was to rob a bank, but not just any bank, the bank. They were going to steal President Richard Nixon's multi-million-dollar stash fund kept at the United California Bank, right? It's just a storm dig, sit down. This info was wrong. They had incorrectly heard this. They used dynamite to reach the vault itself, and once they got to it, they stole 30 million in cash. They actually seemed like they had a plan though. After this, they thoroughly cleaned the townhouse they were renting to remove any potential evidence that they were staying there. They were eventually caught through, generously tipping a cab driver and forgot to wipe the dishwasher they had, so, fingerprints were found. So they didn't do a whole good job, and they were easily caught. A middle-aged pizza delivery man had walked into a bank, handed the teller a note asking for money, then exposed his neck and chest holding a bomb. He had screamed to the officers that came to arrest him that he was being forced to perform the robbery and that the bomb was going to go off. They cleared the area and waited for a disposal squad to arrive, but before they could, the bomb went off. The FBI investigation into who had been behind the incident has led to a trail of clues and dead bodies, quite literally. The Knightsbridge security deposit robbery, also known as the Lavender Hill mob heist, took place on July 12, 1987 in, once again, London, England. English are just criminals, I swear. Have you seen their fingernails? Criminal. One singular person posing as a wealthy Arabian sheik had gained entry to the vault, tied and threatened the staff, then took more than 70 million pounds in cash and jewelry. The robber was then identified as Valerio Vici, a well-known Italian criminal. He got through alarm systems and supposed impenetrable security measures, while also evading capture for several years. Everything he stole had never been recovered either. Valerio was caught and arrested in London during 1990, got sentenced to 22 years in prison, got extradited to Italy, and served even more years for additional crimes. Vincenzo Peruggia stole the Mona Lisa on August 21, 1911, from the Louvre in Paris. The Louvre. I'm not French. Along with media sensation, it took authorities 2 years to find out just who took it. At a certain point during this investigation, Pablo Picasso got arrested because they thought he was involved. Peruggia had actually worked at the Louvre, working as a handyman with access to the paintings themselves, and he was also a criminal. Peruggia and 2 henchmen had taken the painting. They hid it in a storage closet, and when the place closed, they started stealing a lot more. Peruggia and 2 of its henchmen had taken the painting. While the museum was open, they hid it in a storage closet, and when the place closed, they started stealing. They had wrapped it in a blanket, and when the Louvre opened up again, they smuggled it out without anyone noticing. People didn't even notice that the Mona Lisa was stolen. It was actually not even like the most popular painting in the Louvre. It wasn't until one person who specifically came to see the Mona Lisa had notified security. Perugia wanted to sell it, and with widespread news of its stealing, as well as authorities offering a huge reward, this was a hard thing to do. Perugia had tried selling it to an Italian art dealer, and when he met up with the dealer showing up with the head of an Italian art gallery, had confirmed that the authenticity of the Mona Lisa was, legit, so they called the police. Given Perugia's criminal reputation, this made the Mona Lisa more famous around the world. Founded in the 1990s, an international gang of jewel thieves with their origins starting in Serbia and Montenegro. Their organization itself has around 800 members, most of them being ex-soldiers. Right, the Pink Panthers are behind what can be labeled as the more glamorous and audacious heist. Right, they're dubious little goobers. Pink Panthers, though, made one of the most famous heists we can see later in this iceberg. Alright, I'm excited about these. I like train robberies. They're cool as fuck. On August 8, 1963, 2.3 million pounds from a Royal Mail train headed to London from Glasgow, Scotland, had been stolen. A man named Bruce Reynolds and his gang of 15 got onto a train at Bredego Railway Bridge in Buckinghamshire and stole the money. I don't like English cities. I don't like it. They're hard to say. They messed with the signals on the railroad in order to stop the train. The robbers actually fled the country but managed to be caught. 11 men were arrested after a trial in 1964, and in 1968, Bruce Reynolds was arrested and sentenced to 25 years in jail. North Hollywood shootout was a shootout between Larry Phillips Jr. and Emil Matasareanu, against the LAPD. If you can count on someone to shoot, it's the LAPD. Both the robbers had entered and robbed the Bank of America in North Hollywood early morning and had tried to flee into residential areas. They had made it out of there with around $303,305, but they had die packs on them that eventually ruined all the cash that they took. It went down on February 28, 1997. Both robbers were killed. 12 police officers and 8 civilians had been injured, along with multiple vehicles being damaged. And this situation is also super big and deals with a lot more than just the shootout. And due to needing more time for other entries, I'll leave it here. The Lloyds Bank in London had £9 million stolen on September 1971. A 4-man gang committed an inside job on the bank. They rented a leather shop located 2 doors down from the bank and tunneled their way into the vault and took money from 268 safety deposits. There's a weird theory that the robbers were hired by the MI5 in order to retrieve quote-unquote scandalous photos of Princess Margaret that were supposedly in one of the safety deposits. After Y2K was supposed to happen in the year 2000, the Millennium Dome had finished construction in London. Inside the dome was a weird class diamond exhibit, and it held something known as the Millennium Star. Millennium Star is a 203-carat gem worth about 250 million. Robbers had used explosives to get in and ran in guns blazing, quite literally, and planned an escape on a speedboat. It was literally fucking payday in the dome. Police, however, had already had them under surveillance after following armored car robberies, and the robbers had been arrested on the site. I switched positions, the other one sucked. Yeah. A week before Christmas in 2004, robbers dressed up as the police and had broken into the homes of 2 bank managers in Belfast, Northern Ireland. They then proceeded to hold their families hostage. The managers had been told to go to work the next day, and there they were met by the robbers. £26.5 million and other currency were stolen from the Northern Bank, and one person has been arrested for money laundering. Loomis Fargo suffered 2 back-to-back robberies within a 7-month period. The first one was on March 29, 1997, when Philip Noel Johnson had stolen $18.8 million in cash from the vehicle he was driving. Johnson had handcuffed his co-workers and dropped them off at a different location. Johnson had hidden the stash of the money in North Carolina and proceeded to flee to Mexico. He got impatient and tried coming back to the US only 6 months after the crime. At customs, he gave a suspicious answer, or multiple suspicious answers to questions he had been asked, and there he had been caught with multiple passports. He was then taken into custody. Not too long after this, his North Carolina stash had been found and all the $18.8 million had been recovered. This specific robbery still remains as the largest cash robbery on the US as of 2023. The second Loomis Fargo robbery was committed by another employee, David Gant, on October 4th, 1997. Gant was the regional vault supervisor and had gathered a group of co-conspirators to commit the crime. Easy for him since he had access to all the vaults. The group loaded $17.3 million to their branded truck. Then they had moved the money to private cars with his associates. Gant, like Johnson, had also stashed the money, and he also fled to Mexico. The following morning, Gant was the main suspect of the crime due to being the only one who didn't show up for work, and he had been spotted on the security cameras. Investigators finally connected their group to the crime a few months later, and convicted 8 more for the crime while also finding another 16 guilty of indirect involvement. Harry Winston jewelry store in Paris had been raided on December 2008. Thefts or the gunman had went into the jewelry store wearing women's wigs and high heels, and they had stolen $90 million in jewelry. In 2011, $20 million in jewelry had been found in a drain in a Paris suburb. Then, in 2015, 8 people involved in the robbery had been convicted. These men, dressed as women, were a part of the Pink Panthers. In 2007, the Dar es Salaam Bank in Baghdad had been robbed by a group of armed men who then took $282 million in cash and valuables, with American currency making the large amount of it. Very little is actually known about the specifics of what went down during the robbery, and reports say that bank guards had pulled off the heist, who apparently had ties to the police and militias. This would have allowed them to get through various checkpoints without being caught. In 2006, the Senoritas, I don't know how to read that, Securitas depot robbery in Kent, England had become one of the largest cash robberies in British history. Masked men armed with guns had kidnapped the depot manager, his wife, and child. They forced the depot manager to open the depot itself and stole £53 million. Several of the robbers had been caught and arrested, with stolen money also being recovered, but not all of it. A big portion of the money has never been found. Lee Murray, the mastermind behind this heist, had been sentenced to 25 years in prison, and during his trial, a criminal operation had been uncovered in which the full planning of the heist had been revealed. On January 2nd, 1972, a team of professional crooks had disguised themselves with fake beards and glasses and had taken the staff of the Pierre Hotel in Manhattan, New York, hostage. The robbers took $3 million from safe deposit boxes in the hotel and apparently gave each of the hostages $20. The Great Brinks robbery involved 11 men gaining access to a vault and stealing $2.75 million. They had a plan to sit on the money until the 6-year statute of limitations had happened on the crime. Their issue was that they didn't trust each other. The heist itself was an armed robbery of the Brinks building in Boston, Massachusetts on January 17, 1950. It was almost a perfect heist. Literally, money disappeared with no evidence, untraceable culprits, and no suspects. And like I said, they were waiting for the 6-year statute of limitations to end, and 6 days from getting there, they quite literally fumbled the bag. One of the thieves had felt he had been treated unfairly. Joseph O'Keefe, one of the thieves involved, had been arrested for committing another burglary in June of that same year, along with his fellow thief, Stanley Gusiora. They had demanded money from Tony Pino and Joseph McGinnis, the two who had organized the Brinks robbery itself. O'Keefe's share of the looted money went to his legal defense and went to trial for another crime and was released on bail for $17,000. O'Keefe had given a portion of his share to Adolf Maffei. His name is actually Adolf, yeah, for safekeeping, and that he never claimed to have seen it after that. He then kidnapped Vincent Costa and demanded his share. Tony Pino had paid a small ransom to help O'Keefe, but then paid a hitman to kill O'Keefe, who managed to wound him. And in the hospital, the FBI approached O'Keefe, so he talked. 5 days before the limitations ran out, Henry Baker, Michael Geegan, Vincent Costa, Adolph Maffei, Joseph McGinnis, and Tommy Pino, all involved with the Brinks robbery, had been arrested. Stanley Gusiora and Joseph Banfield had died before they could be arrested. Everyone received life sentences, and O'Keefe only 4 years, while only $58,000 of the $2.75 million had been recovered. In 2008, a whole ass church had been stolen from Komarovo, Russia. It was an abandoned church at the time, so what did they do? The villagers sold every brick for 4 rubles. Right, that's the Russian currency. And it seems that the bricks had been used to build an entirely different building. The church does not belong to the people, which sounds backwards, low-key. It belongs to the Orthodox officials. I just think the situation is kind of funny. In 2011 and 2012, the Great Canadian Maple Syrup Heist took place, in which nearly 3,000 tons of maple syrup was stolen from a facility in Quebec. The syrup had been valued at 18.7 million Canadian dollars, and adjusted for inflation, has made it the most valuable heist in Canadian history. The thieves had used trucks to transport the barrels where the syrup had been in. They were sent to a sugar shack, had the syrup siphoned out of them, then refilled the barrels with water, then finally returning them to the storage facility where they came from. It was sent to the south in the state of Vermont in the United States, and then east of New Brunswick. Here they sold it to actual syrup distributors who didn't know the syrup was actually stolen. Richard Valerius was the accused ringleader of this heist and was sentenced to 8 years in prison with a 9.4 million Canadian fine in April 2017. 17 people related to the heist have been arrested when an annual inspection of the inventory led to another investigation. Police recovered barrels from an exporter in New Brunswick. That's how this happened. A dude named Murph, the Surf, or Jack Murphy, and some of his buddies had pulled off a heist at the Museum of National History on October 29, 1964. They stole some of the largest and most expensive jewels the museum had, including the Star of India, the DeLong Star Ruby, and the Midnight Star. The museum has no fucking security, and the window in the jewel room had been propped open for ventilation, and coincidentally, none of the burglar alarms had worked. They got caught because they kept throwing quote-unquote suspiciously lavish parties at a hotel. The jewels had been valued at $410,000, which is about $3 million in 2023. They apparently lasted a whopping 2 days with their fortune. A plainclothesman named James Walsh heard from an informant that 3 men had been throwing parties. It was described as spending money like wild. You'd think they were making all of it with a machine. Detectives got a search warrant and found everything themselves, as well as a floor plan on the museum and books about precious stones. Roger Clark, one of the 3 men involved, walked in to the search, and when questioned, he just caved. In 1994, the Carlton Hotel had been broken into by a thief firing a full-auto pistol into the air. With everyone inside panicking, the thieves made it out with nearly $60 million worth of jewels, and the weirdest part, no bullets or bullet holes were found anywhere. They used fucking blanks. Milan Popovic, a known member of the Pink Panthers, has been suspected of committing the heist itself, as he escaped prison days prior to the heist, but no one has been caught so far. A €1 million reward has been offered to someone who can give any information leading to the stolen items. According to this entry, it says that Wyoming is actually real. The more you know. A Union Pacific train had gone along at 3 in the morning, and when a red lantern appeared in the distance, they made it stop. Grindstone Jones, the man inside the messenger cab, had his locomotive boarded by 3 masked men with guns. Jones had resisted, and then was pistol whipped. The robbers had the cab detached from the train and driven away from the train itself. The robbers had the bridge that they were on rigged with dynamite, so they blew it up. A safe on the train had been blown up with a stick of dynamite and almost destroyed most of the train. And the robbers had taken a reported $36,000, and this was later traced to the famous Butch Cassidy. In August 2018, more than $40,000 worth of insects and lizards had been stolen from the Philadelphia Insectarium and Butterfly Pavilion. An estimated 7,000 animals had been stolen, all of which were seemed to be resold anyways. Who's selling bugs? What the fuck? Only evidence was that blue staff uniforms had been found hanging from the wall, held in place by knives. This leads to the belief of an inside job. On September 23, 2009, Swedish police had faced a highly organized gang of criminals in the countries and the Iceberg's first helicopter robbery. The thieves first stole a fucking helicopter to land on the roof of a cash depot building. It said that the police couldn't use their own helicopter due to decoy bombs being placed on them, presumably by the robbers. They proceeded to break through the windows with sledgehammers and blew the security doors down with explosives. They then raided the cash store vaults. When police cars arrived, their tires were blown out by road spikes that had been laid down over the road. Swedish Air Force offered assistance but were rejected due to this being a civilian matter. Safa Kadum, one of those. One of the robbers had flown to the Dominican Republic, where he was then arrested at the request of the Swedish government. The pilot of the stolen helicopter, Alexander Eriksson, flew to Canary Islands and was met by Swedish police at the airport there. Goran Bojovic was identified as the leader of the robbery. These three had received 8 years imprisonment, while the others involved received 1 year, 2 years, and a 5-year sentence. To this day, the amount that they stole is unknown. On February 18, 2013, 8 masked gunmen in 2 fake police cars stole about $50 million worth of diamonds at the Brussels airport in Belgium. And it's always Belgium, huh? The robbers apparently hid in the construction site outside the airport, dressed up as the police, and entered through a hole they had made in the airport fence. They drove straight to the plane where the diamonds were being transferred, and it said that this time window for them to do this was so small, it would have only lasted 15 minutes just for the chance to steal everything. It's thought that they knew about the transfer procedures and its timing. The robbers stopped the plane, whipped out their guns, and thus stopping the pilots and transport security. The entire robbery took about 3 minutes, which is a lot longer than me, and no bullets were shot, and none of the flight passengers even knew that this had happened. Mark Bertoldi, a luxury car dealer, was revealed as a co-conspirator to the heist when Pascal Pont, one of the 31 suspects, had been caught, and he revealed that he received stolen goods from Bertoldi. Despite not being the mastermind, Bertoldi was sentenced to 5 years in prison and had received a fine on June 2019. On August 6, 2009, the Graf Diamonds robbery took place in New Bond Street, London. 2 men posing as customers stole around 40 million pounds or $65 million worth of diamonds. The robbers had used latex prosthetics, wigs, and even altered their skin tone. You don't have to worry, no one did blackface. They got the help of a professional makeup artist for about 4 hours by telling them this was for a music video, but instead they fucking robbed the jewelry store. What's even funnier about this is that this exact makeup studio had helped disguise those who committed the Securitas robbery in 2006 from earlier. So the robbers never tried to hide their face and were caught by CCTV because, they're fucking disguises. They held staff members at gunpoint, and one was briefly held hostage while taking off with 43 rings, bracelets, necklaces, and watches. The robbers drove off in a getaway car, and that's kinda how they got caught. They fucking crashed the vehicle and then tried to get on a second vehicle, but then they left behind a phone that had anonymous phone numbers. They then tracked down the robbers. 2 weeks later, on August 20, 2009, all the way to August 7, 2010, 6 different men who were involved in the heist were imprisoned. Aman Kasai, I should read these names first, who had planned and executed the heist, was sentenced to 23 years in prison, and Craig Calderwood, the second man in disguise, was given 21 years. John Dillinger had a 15-month bank robbery career and pulled off 11 heists. The most notable and lucrative one was the Central National Bank heist on October 23, 1933. Without shooting a bullet, Dillinger and his 2 boys, Harry Pierpont and Fat Charles Mackley, had stolen $75,000 in cash. And for reference, $75,000 in 1933 is about $1.4 million today. You know what's crazy though? Within 1 year, Dillinger, Mackley, and Pierpont were all dead. During late July 2018, two thieves stole royal jewels from the Stragnas Cathedral in Stockholm, Sweden. They stole some old ass shit too, like these two stole 2 crowns and a golden orb that dated back to the 17th century. From what I could find though, no one realized that these two had stolen anything until they walked out, since they started sprinting after they exited the door. It's like the equivalent of a kid in elementary going up to their friend's crush and saying, "Hey, Nicole likes you," and then just runs away. Anyways, since that made them look weird, security went back to check and see if everything was okay and found a large hole and a spider web of cracks where the items were located. And by the time the police even got there, the thieves had escaped, and a helicopter and boat started searching for them and found nothing. They got away on a speedboat, however, they were pretty fucking retarded. They smashed the glass, they left behind traces of blood. It was smeared on the Queen's scepter, also on display, as well as being on the floor. Also, when they escaped, they were caught running towards motorcycles, and once again, blood was found on one of them. Nicholas Backstrom, already known to the police, had been identified by his DNA matching the blood that was found. Backstrom was given 4.5 years in prison, and the items were found in a parking lot, having been placed there by Martin Ganermo. Ganermo was also found guilty as the second thief. I actually absolutely love this one. A Chinese banker had stolen 50 million yuan, equal to 6.7 million US dollars, between March and April 2007. It's known as the largest bank robbery in China. Bank manager Ren Xiaofeng had stolen 2,000 yuan or 26,000 US dollars in complicity with 2 security guards. And you want to know why Ren started stealing? Get ready for this. It was so he could play the lottery. Not only that, he intended to win the lottery, put the money back before anyone noticed, and had tried to keep some of the money for himself. That's how you win the lottery, boys. You rob a bank. Don't actually do that. Despite the odds, Ren actually won the lottery in 2006. Then, in 2007, he did it again. On a much larger scale, he teamed up with the other manager, Ma Shanjing, and they stole 32.96 million yuan, or $4.3 US million. And then, they spent 31 million on lottery tickets. However, they didn't win enough to put back the stolen money. So they stole even more money, that they ended up stealing 18 million and blew through 14 million to recover their losses. Eventually, they just bought fake IDs and tried to flee. This resulted in everyone being caught. Ren and Ma were sentenced to death, while security guards and a 5th man were sentenced to 5 years in jail. Ren and Ma were executed in 2008 in Hebei province and cremated, with their ashes being thrown into the Yellow Sea by the police. Edvard Munch's painting Scream is most famously remembered for predicting the YouTuber thumbnail. And just like the Mona Lisa, this fucker was stolen. On February 12, 1994, the Winter Olympics had their opening day, and because of Olympic festivities, they moved the Scream painting down to a 2nd floor, away from its original spot. The thieves had climbed up a ladder, and they broke a window, stole the bitch, and left a note. It read, quote unquote, "Thanks for the poor security." You know, they fucking rubbed it in their faces. They demanded 1 million US dollars, but the National Gallery refused to pay it. I can't say that fucking word. Instead, Norwegian authorities teamed up with Britain's SO10 and LA's J. Paul Getty Museum. British detective Charles Hill managed to recover the painting, convincing the thieves to hand it over under the guise that the Getty Museum was willing to pay for it. 4 men were convicted in January 1996, but were unfortunately released on legal bounds since the British detectives entered the country with false identities. Alright, real quick. What's your favorite kind of cheese? Amsterdam Cheese Museum was home to the most valuable cheese slicer in the world, the Bosca Holland cheese slicer. It was worth over 26,000 and was locked up in its basement, like a fucking basement dweller. Sometime in 2015, the thieves just straight up stole it. Like, there was no grand scheme here, they just kind of fucking took it and it's on camera. The cheese slicer was made up of platinum and had been encrusted with 220 diamonds. I have no word if they ever recovered it or not. The Kalembra bank robbery was one of the biggest crimes in Kerala, India, taking place on December 30th, 2007. 4 bank robbers made a hole in the 1st floor of the Kerala Grameen Bank. The 1st floor of the bank was a restaurant that was up for rent. They had rented out the restaurant, shut down the front door, covered the windows, bought construction material, and hung up a sign that said they were under renovation. Pretty convincing, huh? Then, they started stealing. They cracked open a hole in the ceiling of the 1st floor, leading to the strong room where the money was kept. Gold and cash were stolen from the safe, with a total of 80 million Indian rupees, or an equivalent of 961,000 US dollars. The robbers had tried to mislead any investigations by purposefully leaving behind gold in a hotel room, leaving behind pro-communism sentiments, and made many different phone calls from multiple cities. However, a secret phone number used by the suspects was identified, and 4 people were tracked down and arrested. The leader of the robbery said a Bollywood movie named Doom inspired the heist itself, which I think is funny. A group of Russian hackers committed some of the largest cyber hacks ever, stealing 1 billion euros. Ever since 2013, this gang had been trying to steal money digitally with the help of their own design malware named Carbonac and Cobalt. Cobalt? Cobalt. This has been used in over 40 countries and resulted in 1 billion euros in total to be stolen. Basically, what they would do is impersonate large companies and hack bank employee devices through emails by spear phishing them. They would take control of the machines and get access to the ATMs, which would then tell them how much they could cash out and how to do it. The profits were then laundered via everyone's favorite thing, crypto, and used it to buy cars and houses. The FBI, the European Banking Federation, the European Crime Center, the Spanish National Police, Romanian, Moldovan, Belarusian, and Taiwanese — Taiwan is a country — all of those authorities had all come together with the private security companies to catch these guys. In Alicante, Spain, on March 6, 2018, a man unofficially named Dennis K. was arrested after 20 law enforcement officials stormed into his house. Dennis had been the one who was coding the malware, so it's believed that he was the mastermind behind the entire thing. Sorry it took so long to mention, but Bitcoin! Several large data firms have moved to Iceland over the years due to inexpensive energy being better in Iceland to hold the power of these massive computers that they use. During December 2017 to January 2018, a gang led by Sindri Thor Stephenson had raided 4 Icelandic data server warehouses and stole 600 computers and accessories worth up to $2 million, which they used to mine Bitcoin. Lots of the facilities were left open for personnel to monitor equipment, and this was taken advantage of. Eventually, the group had been caught by CCTV used by the tech firm Advania, who had been robbed about 3 of the 4 times that the gang had struck. More than 22 people were arrested, and Stephenson, who was being detained in a low-security prison, had escaped in April 2018. He then fled to Sweden under an alias and hadn't been arrested again until 2021. The stolen equipment has also not been found, and investigators believe that it may have been used to illegally mine Bitcoin. An entire 10-ton bridge was stolen in broad daylight in the Czech Republic in 2012. That's just fucking funny, dude. The thieves had told the police that they had been hired to demolish the bridge and to remove any unwanted railway track to make way for a new cycle route. They had forged documents on them that had convinced the police, and they stole the fucking bridge with 200 meters of railway track. The weird part is that this wasn't the only bridge that had been stolen as well, and it's not the only bridge that had been stolen in the Czech Republic. No one knows why they stole it, but it's believed that they intended to sell it for scrap, or to sell the scrap. They just wanted to fucking sell it, which I think is weird. How do you sell a bridge? In August 2017, thieves stole a refrigerated truck holding 20 tons of Nutella and Kinder Eggs in Neustadt, Germany. Somewhere in Germany. This was estimated to be worth $80,000, and German law enforcement came out and stated that anyone selling large amounts of chocolate through unconventional means should be reported to the police. Apparently, not only did they steal the chocolate, but they stole the semi-truck trailer too. That same weekend, an entire truck full of fruit juice was also stolen. Like, what the fuck is going on in Germany, dude? Andre Stander was a South American cop who ended up becoming a bank robber. So Stander would sometimes commit these crimes while on his lunch break while being a cop, then come back to the scene of the crime as a cop. Bro was out here playing like 9D chess, it's fucking amazing. Stander claimed to have been disillusioned with the police force after he and fellow officers shot down unarmed school kids in the Soweto uprising in 1976, killing 176 of them. However, he actually wasn't there when that happened, and other accounts say that Stander was just bored and wanted some action in his life. You and me both, brother, but don't steal. After having robbed about 30 banks, Stander was caught and arrested, then sentenced to 75 years in prison on May 6, 1980. However, In 1983, he and 2 other inmates had escaped, but on 1984 he was caught and shot by an officer who attempted to stop his escape. One of, if not the most famous outlaws that there ever was a man named Butch Cassidy who had robbed his first bank and made him famous. On June 24, 1899, Cassidy and others had robbed the bank of San Miguel Valley Bank in Colorado and stole about 20,000 US dollars, which is equal to somewhere between 600,000 and 780,000 as of 2023. Right, these are like big money moves, if anything. Accounts on how many people were involved vary. It's usually between 3 or 4. We can confirm 3, so we'll just go with that. One of the men involved, Matt Werner, had pretended to cash in a check, then proceeded to hold the bank teller at gunpoint. During this, Cassidy stole the money, and then Tom McCarty, the third man, had been waiting for the 2 outside on their getaway horses. It's not a super flashy heist, but that's the story of how Butch Cassidy got his story started. On October 6, 1866, William, Frank, John, and Simeon Reno made the first famous train robbery in the US. This incident went down in Seymour, Indiana, after the brothers had gone onto an Ohio and Mississippi railroad passenger and took an estimated 16,000, which would be around 300,000 as of 2023. Alright, so how did they do it? The brothers moved down from the train into a car owned by the Adams Express Company, which delivered packages, bank documents, and drafts. They had worn masks to hide themselves, pointing their guns at the Adams Express employee, Ella Miller, and demanded the company's safe to be opened. They had worn masks to hide themselves, pointing their guns at the Adams Express employee, Ella Miller, and demanded the company's safe to be opened. Miller was only able to open a local safe, and the Reno brothers looted that one and tossed a larger one off the train. They signaled for the train to stop and ran off before the conductor could continue to move the train itself. Apparently, they were never able to crack open the safe they stole, which is just funny to me. After this, train robberies became more frequent, so while this wasn't the very first one, it was the one that popularized train robberies. The most recent one on this iceberg took place on November 25th, 2019. 5 men were involved, with a 6th being acquitted in the Dresden Green Vault heist, where 123 million was stolen in historical jewelry and ornaments. A week prior to the heist, the exact planning went on. A hole in a metal grate was cut and placed back. There we go. A hole in a metal grate was cut and placed back. One person broke into a service room for the city power supply. On the day of the heist, a homemade bomb went off in front of the electrical service room that had been broken into prior. This had knocked out streetlights in the immediate area. The gang entered through the hole they had made, and then the green vault had been broken into by the gang. 2 masked thieves had smashed through glass with hammers and an axe, then stole 21 diamond-studded artifacts. Nearly all of the items that were stolen were made during the rule of Frederick Augustus I, the first king of Saxony. The list of stolen items include a ceremonial 36-inch sword and sheath, headwear with 15 large and more than 100 small diamonds, necklaces, pendants, buttons, and brooches, all of them holding around 4,300 diamonds and other valuable stones. 2 private security guards watched this go down on CCTV footage, but were forced by rules not to confront them due to being unarmed. The gang involved were found to be a part of the Remno clan, which usually operated out of Berlin and was one of the most powerful crime families in Germany. 3 of the 5 were sentenced to 5 and 6 years in prison, while the other 2 got 4 and 5 years in juvenile detention. The gang had agreed to return the loot for less prison time, and they did, but not all of it was recovered. At this time, the state is still searching for 89 million in damages and their missing treasures. Historians believe on February 13, 1866, Frank and Jesse James had committed the first daytime bank robbery. An estimated 10 to 12 men rode into Clay County in Missouri, with 2 of them going into the bank to change a $10 bill. Once the clerks started to change the bill, he and his assistant had revolvers pulled on them. This is when the gang started robbing the bank, and after they were done, they shoved both workers into the vault, having stolen around $60,000. Once they were making their way out, a young man named George Wymore had been gunned down by the gang, who was believed to have been someone who sounded an alarm. Another man named S.H. Holmes had also been shot twice. There's no substantial proof that Jesse James did it. It's believed that he was still bedridden after a chest wound he suffered at the end of the Civil War, but many think that he may have planned it. James seems to be blamed for it though because of his popularity of being a bank robber, so historians seem to just put these things together. So along with Butch Cassidy, Jesse James has also got to be one of the most famous outlaws there ever was. What's known as the Last Judgment heist is also regarded as the first art heist. Hans Memling painted a depiction of the Last Judgment during the Second Coming of Christ, which is basically a concept of Jesus Christ coming back to earth after ascending to heaven and judging souls whether they go to heaven or hell. The painting's portrait has 3 panels. The main painting with Jesus and Archangel Michael, souls being guided by St. Peter to heaven on the left, and souls being driven down towards hell on the right. However, in 1473, Polish pirates had set sail for Florence, Italy, and took the Last Judgment painting. That's quite literally it. Paul Benecke, the only named pirate, just kind of stole it and took it back to Poland with him. And Italy spent forever trying to get it back, and it's still in Poland. Stanley Mark Rifkin was a computer professional in electronic transfer systems who ended up stealing a whopping $10.2 million from the Security Pacific National Bank in Los Angeles. He did this by manipulating wire transfers directly to a Swiss bank account, and at the time during 1978, this was considered the largest bank robbery in history. Rifkin's job was to design a backup system for banks' authorization codes, and he had access to transfer procedures. Bank officers who could authorize bank transfers were given a specific code every day, which they would write down and post it somewhere easily visible to them. Rifkin found this out and went to look for it. After going into the wire room where the code was, supposedly doing his job, Rifkin found the code and memorized it while also memorizing an officer's ID number. Rifkin then left and went to a payphone in the lobby, changing and using his name Mike Hansen, member of the bank's international department. During this, he made 3 calls and he gave instructions to wire $10.2 million to an account in Zurich, Switzerland that he already made. A few days later, Rifkin went to Switzerland, got the money, hired a diamond merchant to pick up 43,200 carats in diamonds, paid $8 million for them, and flew back home under the role of a diamond courier. During his flight back, he hid diamonds in a money belt, which he had passed through US Customs. Rifkin holds the fucking Guinness World Record for biggest computer fraud. Rifkin asked his lawyer to help him negotiate giving the bank he worked for the diamonds in exchange for a consulting contract because he could help solve the security problem the bank apparently had. Rifkin's lawyer actually gave him up to the FBI, and they set up a sting operation against Rifkin and lured him into committing another crime. They did this in order to have evidence to prosecute him. Rifkin then pleaded guilty to the first theft he committed. After all this, I realized dude could have gotten away with it if it wasn't for his lawyer. Like that, Jesus Christ, don't steal. This one takes place in the Bronx neighborhood of New York. The Century Armored Car Company suffered a loss of $11 million in a planned and convincing inside job. The guard Christos Potamidis made a hole in the roof of the company's headquarters, left his associate inside, and even handcuffed himself for further convincing. At the time, this was the biggest cash robbery in the US, and I feel like a lot of these have been regarded as the biggest heist of all time. 5 people were arrested, including Potamidis and George Legacki, whatever, his partner in crime. Potamidis was arrested on February 2nd, 1983, while vacationing in San Juan, Puerto Rico, in a private resort where Legacki willingly turned himself in. Potamidis ended up writing a screenplay about his life of crime and even the heist itself, which ended up starring everyone's most hated wrestler at the moment, The Rock, in 2013. We want Cody. Alright. Please. There were a couple of cheese heists that took place in the state of Wisconsin in the US. One heist had 20,000 pounds of cheese stolen from a parked semi-trailer. The driver was said to be driving the semi-trailer from Green Bay to New York City, and that $46,000 worth of cheese was gone when the driver stopped to run an errand. Another heist had $70,000 worth of cheese stolen in Germantown, Wisconsin. However, this was only an attempt, as the cheese was found later in Milwaukee. First one to happen that year was in Marshland, Wisconsin, where $90,000 worth of Parmesan cheese was stolen from a storage facility. I don't know what the fuck is going on in Wisconsin, but they seem to really like their cheese. So, I'm gonna steal it. No, I'm not. Don't steal. This one will hopefully get its own video because it's James Bond related, and it gives me an excuse to make a James Bond video. So I won't get into every detail. The famous Aston Martin DB5 that debuted in the 1964 movie Goldfinger has been stolen. See, the thing is, there's other versions of this car. The GoldenEye version driven by Pierce Brosnan is on display in New York, but the one specifically used and driven by Sean Connery himself was stolen from a Florida airport in 1997. The weird part is that no one knows how this happened or who did it. No alarms went off and a belief that someone somehow took a plane holding the car without alerting anyone. That shit is fucking weird. However, the car is believed to be in the Middle East, in the possession of a car collector. An eyewitness had reported the car still having its original chassis identification number on it. There we go. The DB5 is still worth up to $27 million, and the DB5's insurance company is offering $100,000 as a reward for bringing it forward. Alright, that's it. That's all the heists. I finally this has been worked on since March of 2023. It's probably gonna be like March 2024 when it comes out. It's just so annoying. This is long. So many like computer crashes and interruptions have happened. You've seen my hair change and my outfits change. It's like 4 times already. This is annoying. This is annoying to do, and this is annoying to put together. I don't know if you can tell, but this was entirely scripted. I don't ever do scripts, so this was really fucking hard. But there were so many heists, I was just not gonna remember everything. I had to script this. Anyways, I'm tired, bro. I'm tired. I'm gonna leave. I'm gonna go home. I'll leave my rambling there, and to that, I'm just gonna say bye.